Hi everyone, welcome to the Essential Home Office Compliance Update with Nourish Care and Borderless. My name is Freya, I'm going to be taking the session today. We're bang on 12, so I will give it a few more minutes for a few latecomers to join. But in the meantime, please do put in the chat where you're tuning in from across the UK. I know we've got a few people tuning in from Scotland or Yorkshire, so I'd love to see where you guys are tuning in from today. I hope it's sunny wherever you guys are tuning in from. In London, unfortunately, it is raining quite bad. The sunglasses are a placebo effect. It's not sunny, but hopefully they will bring out some sun this afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I do have my colleague Prashant in the chat just to let you know, so he will be there if you have any queries. I'll just give it a few more minutes for joining in. I know some of you maybe were expecting my colleague Will. I like to say I'm Will with longer hair, better hair, but I'll just introduce myself shortly. I'll just wait for a few more minutes for a few people to join. Okay, just going to get started. So thank you all for joining. As I said before, this is a Nourish Care and Borderless webinar. So over the next 45 minutes or so, we'll be covering what's been changing with the Home Office, what it means for your workforce and your sponsor license, common pitfalls when it comes to compliance, and how to prepare for an audit. So my name is Freya Preedy. I lead the partnerships team at Borderless. So I work with quite a few companies similar to Nourish Care, just ensuring that their members are fully up to date with what's going on with Home Office. And for those of you who don't know Borderless, we are an immigration tech platform that covers sponsorship for all companies who have a sponsor license or are looking to get a sponsor license. So we cover everything from the immigration standpoint. So COS requests, visa processing, and then overall Home Office compliance. So if you are new to Borderless, welcome. Hopefully this will give you a little taster about what is encompassed in the platform. A little bit of housekeeping for today. So there is a Q&A box in the right-hand section of the webinar geek. So please do type your questions. As I said before as well, we have my colleague Prashant in the chat, who will be sharing a few free resources as well. And this session will be recorded and slides will be sent out. So if your colleagues can't make it, don't worry, we've got you. I do also have to make a disclaimer. I'm not an immigration advisor. So if you do have specific niche situations that you would like to speak about, I will, for legal reasons, can't give you advice, but do feel free to get in contact with us after, and I'll get our immigration team to cover those situations that you're feeling from. Also, we are here to learn from each other, so please do put in the chat box any experiences that you've personally had with the Home Office. Maybe it's a good encounter or a bad encounter. I think in terms of care, it's always best to learn from what your peers are going through and what the experiences have been. So please do feel free to have a chat between yourselves as well in the chat box. And let's get into it. So just before we dig in, I'm curious to see how many sponsored workers you currently have. So there'll be a poll on the screen. This will just help me pitch the rest of the session catered to, who the majority of our audience, how many numbers of sponsored workers you have. So please do feel free to start the poll. I can see some polls coming in. So for today's session, it's quite a large majority of you have more than 5. I think from recent experiences from speaking to care providers where there's a huge staffing issue at the minute within care, we are expected to see that number slightly go up. I'll speak about trends in a minute. But yeah, so more than 5, that's nice to see. And don't worry, if you have fewer than 5, we will still be relevant. So on today's agenda, we'll be covering what's changing, what this means for your workforce, for your license. And then, like I said before, we'll go over compliance risks and how to prepare for your inspection. So the main thing is what's been changing. So this made national news last year. So 2025 was the biggest overhaul of legal migration in 50 years. So there were so many changes. There were big structural changes, there were minor changes. There are always changes going on with Home Office, which is why it's so important to keep up to date. But we have been tracking it closely, and what we are seeing, the honest truth, is that a lot of providers are confused about what it specifically means for them and their workforce. This is largely due to the fact that about 40% of the adult social care sector are sponsored workers. So it's a huge proportion of our people that take care of society that are sponsored workers. So these changes will not only directly impact them, but you as care providers and your business as well. So just the reason behind these, this is what Home Office have put out, is that these reforms represent themselves a comprehensive modernisation of the point-based immigration system. So the Home Office have stated that a sponsor licence is a privilege and not a right, and just as fast as it is given, it can equally be taken away just as fast. So the reasons for this they are stating is that they are becoming simpler but stricter, so fewer routes and tougher thresholds. This is linked to workforce needs. So they do look at trends and patterns about where need more sponsored workers and then allocate visas according to economic demand. And there will be a lot more monitoring and penalties. So stronger compliance is to drive net migration down. So this will 100% affect your workforce and your license. So the stricter the rules, the more scrutiny, and then the higher consequences for getting it wrong. So this is a huge, impact for the care sector, like I mentioned before. But naturally, the care sector is one of the most scrutinized in the UK when it comes to the sectors. So, the care sector is always used to compliance increasing, but we'll simplify how to keep up to date with that. So what this looks like in reality is that last year, 3,100 sponsor licenses were revoked. So that is expected to be 10,000 revocations in 2026, which we're already seeing to come into effect. So we are nearly at the halfway point of 2026, and the Home Office are on trend to reach that number of 10,000 revocations by the end of the year. So this huge increase in revocations is also related to things like consequences like fines and things like that, which we'll go into. So poor compliance, you can be charged up to £60,000 per repeated offence. Your licence is revoked, and this will also be reputational damage as well. So it does go on a public record, which makes it harder to sponsor again in the future. And just, it's quite a bad image. But biggest of all that we are noticing is that your workers will lose their right to stay. So for example, just at the end of April, I met a gentleman at the Care Show London who told me that his license was revoked and he was sponsoring 90 workers. So that was 90 workers that immediately had to stop working. And in turn, this just increases the displaced worker pool. It's horrible for those who are your key element to your workforce. It's a horrible situation to be in, not only for yourself, but also for them. And the gentleman, what he told me it was revoked for, unfortunately, it could have been avoided. I'll speak about what it was later on because it is quite relevant. So what this means for you is that the longer sponsorship cycles and more certificate of sponsorship admin will change your workers' journey. So this is things operationally like maybe you need to start thinking a lot more stricter when it comes to your workforce planning. Maybe you need to start planning a year ahead or a year and a half ahead, especially if you are looking to grow exponentially, because it will need to be tied in line with Home Office. Financial, so this obviously has increased the charges of sponsorship, so it does cost more. And a lot of workforce is harder to retain on a sponsor license. However, what we have noticed is that sponsored workers are a lot more likely to stay with you over a longer period of time. So that is why a lot of people have sponsored a lot of workers in the care sector specifically, because it could be dependent on maybe they're on a 3-year course, or a 1-year course. They're just a lot more certain to stay with you. So there are benefits to sponsorship as well. So what are a few of the changes? So a couple of new changes for sponsors is the first one is that you must make your sponsored workers aware of their rights. So this was in line with the Employment Rights Act. So you must ensure that your workers understand their rights coming into the UK or as a sponsored worker. So this covers things like national minimum wage, trade union membership, pensions, statutory sick pay, and you must have evidenced as well. Big word we're going to use today is evidencing. So you must have evidenced to them as well that you have communicated their rights with them. And the authorizing officer for your company must now read and understand the sponsor guide fully. So the responsibility does lie with them. So please bear that in mind. Another huge thing that we have seen this year is that UKVI is now working very, very closely with HMRC. So we actually did a webinar last week with a gentleman from HMRC who was talking about national minimum wage. So they always have communicated with each other, but now, as of the change, your pay data goes straight to the Home Office and HMRC. So they are working very close hand in hand. So since April 2026, so just over a month now. So we are seeing a huge spike in revocations due to this. So that was actually what the gentleman at the care show had his license revoked for, was a pay issue. Now, he actually let me know that he was using an accountant. However, you must understand that the responsibility as a sponsor license holder lies with yourself. So have these conversations with your accountant, have these conversations with the person who's in charge of payroll. They might not understand the discrepancy between, what is on a COS and what is national minimum wage. So just a few, numbers. National minimum wage currently is £12.71. However, majority of people fall on a 6135 SOC code. The minimum pay is £12.82. So you might think, 10p, 11p difference, what difference does it make? A huge difference, because HMRC are working very closely. So what it is, or the actual, how to act upon it, is that the payroll record needs to match what's on the COS, not now only over a moderation over a year, but it needs to match every payroll cycle. So whether you pay bi-weekly or whether you pay monthly, maybe you pay 6 months in advance, it needs to match every payroll record. So please do look at integrating your payroll records with a system like Home Office, or, like I said, have these conversations with whoever is in charge of your pay. And the gap between a COS salary and what's actually being paid can trigger an enforcement with no site visit needed. So this will trigger an investigation, and it is a non-compliance issue. So what is the compliance risks? So Home Office compliance is the legal duties that you must meet when sponsoring sponsored workers. So you must follow the rules, keep accurate records, and prevent illegal workers. So who's responsible? You've got 3 main areas of people who should definitely be up to date with what's going on with Home Office. First and foremost, obviously, is your authorising officer. Perhaps that's not you as a director, perhaps it's your care manager or your director of HR, but they are ultimately accountable for the compliance of the Home Office. Your HR and recruitment, so when they are in charge of things like right to work checks, record keeping, they are very important in this role. So do have these conversations with them as well. And senior management, we will cover it, but also when Home Office come to visit, these are the main 3 types of people who will be liaising with the Home Office. So the duty does fall on all 3, but the authorising officer is the main person accountable. So your 4 core duties as a sponsor license holder is record keeping, so keeping records of sponsored workers for at least 6 years. So actually as well with HMRC, if there is a tip-off, or maybe someone has said, I don't think I'm being paid right, or this company's not paying right, they also look back at records up to 6 years ago. So something that you perhaps have done 5 years ago or 4 years ago, whether that's with pay or Home Office, it can actually still be investigated. So it is better to kind of check what you're doing now, check what you've previously done, and see if there are any discrepancies. Monitoring and reporting, so track workers. So this is things like, has their job description changed, or has their job location changed? And notify the Home Office. Any notifying changes with your business, so maybe there's been a change of hands in director, anything on Companies House, any address changes or branch changes. We do actually have a compliance checker at Borderless where we could see if there's any changes that have happened within your company and things that need to be reported. And any key personnel, so keep designated staff responsible and up to date with what is going on. These are a few examples of changes that you must report. So change of key officer, authorizing officer, sponsor size, maybe someone's been let go who was a sponsor worker, you need to let them know. We would always say over-report rather than under-report, 100%. It's way better to cover your backs that way. So a few common areas of where compliance breaks down is weak right to work check. So that's the most common trigger. So this needs to be done before employment. You cannot be doing it a week into employment. You know, someone started and you think, oh gosh, I haven't done it. I need to quickly do it. It needs to be done before the start of employment. Incorrect salary reporting. My personal prediction is that this will be a #1 revocation in the next upcoming months. Poor record keeping. So if you are at risk of an audit failure, and non-genuine vacancies. So perhaps you've advertised a job that doesn't actually exist and you are sponsoring someone who doesn't match up with that job. Just a quick pop quiz, I guess. How many days or working days must you report a change of circumstance? I'm going to put out the poll. Let's see. Whether this is yourself as a manager or maybe a director, please let us know. If we have any authorizing officers on the chat, I'm really, really hoping you get this right, guys. So the majority is voting correct. So yeah, it's within 10 working days. So all changes must be reported within 10 working days. Now, if after this session, you maybe go and do a mini audit and you realize you've had a change of circumstance and it's been 12 days or 13 days, please don't let this put you off not reporting. It is always better to report rather than not report and think it won't get noticed, because it absolutely will. So this is how to prepare for your inspection from Home Office. So an audit, so you've got a pre-license audit. For those who have a sponsor license, you'll know what this looks like. So it usually goes over things like your pay records, and then you have a post-license. So this can happen anytime. So usually Home Office will give you a bit of notice. Maybe they'll send you a notification, we're coming on this date or within this time period. However, Home Office don't have to do that at all. If they want to, show up at your door and say, we're doing an inspection, they more than likely can. So just be prepared. It's always better to be prepared rather than scrambling around for the information that they're looking for. Things that can trigger an audit is not meeting your sponsorship duties. So for example, poor records, inaccurate or late reporting. So if they have seen that you have had a change of circumstance and you've not reported it, this can trigger an audit. Employment practice issues. So again, whether that's raised by somebody who is not getting paid correctly, or whether that's HMRC that are notifying Home Office that the pays are not correct. This is a big reason. Or any tip-offs, including with whistleblowing. So before the audit, like I said, they usually will, give you notice that they are looking to audit. They will do a document request. So this will be a list of records that you should already have on the day, and they'll let you know what they're going to look for. And employee interviews. So they might select certain employees that they want to talk to and ensure that they are available on that day. On the actual day, the Home Office caseworker will set out an objective, this is what we're going to be looking at. Again, they'll do a document review and they will have interviews. So us personally, ourselves, Borderless, we sponsor about 1/3 of our workforce. So we know what an audit feels like as well. We had an audit last year. And I will say it can be quite daunting for your sponsored workers. It is quite a scary thing having Home Office, come and speak to you. So after this session, I would, comfort them in saying, we feel fully prepared. This is how you should prepare. Give them a few examples. So it might be, for example, the Home Office officer is asking them, okay, tell me what your day-to-day activities look like. And they'll match it to the cause and see if there's any discrepancies. Just beware as well, they can also interview people who are not sponsored workers. So it's your whole workforce that could be up for interviewing. But again, reassure them, you could plan for it to take about 4 to 8 hours. However, this is completely dependent on your workforce size. If you've got 30 sponsored workers, it's going to look very different to somebody who's only sponsoring 1 or 2 sponsored workers, purely because of the vast amount that they need to get through. How to prepare. So these are things I would immediately do after this. So review your SMS system. We all know what the SMS system looks like. It looks like it was made in the 90s and never updated. However, please do review if you've been keeping it up to date. Check when your reports of changes were made. Check if they were in line with regulation. Get your pre-license documents ready, and also your workers. Review your worker reports, your documentation, reporting processes. Just review everything. Almost do like a mini audit before they come. And how you can do that is pull several employers' records and just take people at random, pick it out of a hat, who knows, and then you can check and say, okay, we've got the documentation correct on this, or maybe there's something a little bit wrong there. These are a few examples of documents that you must have ready. The full checklist is available online as well. And don't worry about screenshotting this or anything. We will be sending the slides to you anyway. But these are things, so pay slips, absence records, previous sponsored workers as well. Make sure you've got the records for those too, because like we said, they can backdate and check things as well for previous sponsored workers. So I am quite curious at the minute how you manage your compliance today. So is it through spreadsheets? Maybe you don't have a tracking system, a HR system, external solicitors, or are you an existing customer of Borderless? I'm going to poll now. While that's going, I'm going to have a quick look at the chat. There's quite a few questions. I'll leave that for the end, for the Q&As. Okay, so it seems like we've got quite a few Borderless customers here. Hello. Hi, everyone. A lot of people are using spreadsheets and a HR system. So just to disclaim, a HR system is a HR system, and something to track your sponsored workers is completely different. So we do work very well with HR systems. We are in partnership with quite a few HR systems because we work perfectly hand in hand. But the difference is Borderless is specifically sorting everything to do with your sponsored workers and home office. So a lot of people choose Borderless because it's real-time compliance score. So every worker has a compliance score dependent on their documentation, what evidence we've got for them. We have automated alerts as well. So this is things like whether a visa is about to expire. So for example, if you are using a spreadsheet at the minute, it won't encompass this. It won't let you know when a visa is about to expire. We have COS requests as well, where we can fast track slots to the home office, and you're audit ready by default. So we are IA regulated. So when home office come and do an audit, you can say, look, I'm using Borderless. Here is all my evidence. It's all in one place. And we do have our expert immigration support. So they are already in-house. They're combining tech with their immigration expertise. So this is also keeping up to date with things like if a home office policy comes out next week, the system will automatically regulate and check what new policy needs to be adhered by. So again, Borderless is very specialized in immigration rather than a general HR platform. We are integrated with the SMS system. So like I said, it's very clunky, made in the 90s. So imagine never having to log on to the SMS again is basically what you're getting with Borderless. So we get added as a level 1 user, and then any direct communication with the home office comes through us. So you just let us know if there's a change of circumstance or whether you want to put a job offer out for a visa application. So this is what you'll be getting with Nourish Care. After this, we're going to give you a free checklist covering everything for today's audit. So you can go and talk to your team and find out, do a mini audit in-house. Are we compliant? What things we should be adhering to from the checklist? And also off the back of this, please do feel free to get in touch with us on a complimentary session with how Borderless can support you. Again, you can talk to our immigration experts. If there are specific questions in the Q&A, which I'll have a look at, please bear in mind we will be sending that to our immigration team, but you can get in touch with them online or through a demo request, and then you can discuss with your internal team. I would also include your sponsored workers in this conversation just for best practice, because as much as you are probably confused as a care provider or director or authorizing officer, they probably are equally as daunted by this whole changes with Home Office. Okay, now I'm gonna just have a quick look through the chat box from the beginning. Okay, so is it a requirement to request and keep compliance on file? So COS certificates, yes. So everything needs to be kept on file. Like I said, the big word for today is evidencing. Even if you are doing supplementary hours or you have workers who are on supplementary hours, it's always best to mitigate yourself from compliance issues by keeping records and keeping all evidence of that. So whether it's not that you're personally sponsoring them, but another company is, you should still keep, all records up to date with things like that. Prashant, thank you for answering a few of these. So how are multi-site organizations with varying work patterns checking their sponsored staff, meeting the going rate? So it doesn't matter if they're working at different sites, the pay of the worker needs to match what's on the COS. So that would seem, Ben, like you would need to speak to, whoever's in charge at each site and gather the data on how many hours that person is doing. So maybe check things like your rostering system and have things planned like that. And then again, check that it does match the COS. Hani asked, is the 1282 only? Yes. So sorry, I'll read it out loud for everyone. Is the £12.82 only if you've sponsored a worker since April 2025? Yes. So as of April 8th, 2025, any care worker on stock code 6135 will get paid has to be paid £12.82 onwards. Ambrose, yes, we will have the slides sent to you. Louise as well, yes, the webinar will be sent out. Feel free to share it with your colleagues as well. Another thing I'm going to ask Prashant to put in the chat is we've created a national minimum wage checker for you to be able to check if you are paying according to what HMRC are asking for, which is free. So please do feel free to download that. So Ben asked, how does Borderless ensure colleagues are paid the going rate? So we actually have a COS and payroll compliance checker where you upload the pay slips for your sponsored workers and we have their COS on record, and we analyze and scan them both, whether that's every 2 weeks or every month or however often you pay. And then we use our technology to look at whether there's any discrepancies, and we will highlight that. So it's perfect for maybe you're in charge of pay slips, maybe you've got an accountant or something, but if you just upload all your pay slips, we will then highlight, okay, there's a 10p discrepancy, this needs to be looked into, or maybe someone is not meeting pay because of statutory sick pay, we will then flag that up. So that's where our advanced technology comes into play. Does Borderless help with supplementary work employees compliance? Yes. So on the platform, which is why I think it's a great idea for you to get in touch and try and arrange a one-to-one with one of our teams. So on the platform, you've got all your individuals listed. So whether that be your sponsored workers, maybe they're on a spousal visa, or they are doing supplementary work, it just keeps all of your compliance per worker in order, all evidenced, everything is backlogged. How do you keep evidence records of absences? So this is to do with your rostering system. So if you have a record of absence for a prolonged period of time, you reporting that through your SMS will count as evidence for that. But this also goes for your regular workers. How do you keep track of their absences? Is exactly the same for the sponsored workers, but you need to report on it. And if you are a customer of Borderless trying to get in contact, we will get in touch with you after this webinar. So I'm going to end things here now, guys. Nice 30 minutes wrap up. I hope you have a nice lunchtime ahead. I hope you've got some good food and you're having a nice rest. Like I said before, I hope it is sunny wherever you are. And yeah, do get in touch with us. We will send out the slides, and thank you for joining, everyone.